Good morning.
Good morning, Maria. How are you?
I'm having one hell of a morning.
But you know what? I really appreciate our ability to just laugh about it because we're talking about making mistakes, and that is the human condition. We make nobody's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes, and it's in how you respond to that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting that we've had a pretty interesting morning and that we are laughing about it. And that's what we're going to talk about today, right?
Well, yes. One aspect of making mistakes and actually bringing awareness to what's behind it, right? So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to Coaching Conversations, where we dive into deeper questions about human behavior, mindset, and personal growth. I'm Lourdes Leeper.
And I am Maria Savio. Today we're tackling a fascinating topic, and it's why some mistakes are worse than others and how to understand this. And when you do understand it, it can help you make better choices in your everyday life.
Yes, because as we just said, we all make mistakes, whether it's snapping at someone in anger or making a choice that we regret later. But did you know that not all mistakes are equal? Some come from emotional reaction, while others come from self-indulgence.
Yeah, and understanding that difference is key, because if we don't recognize where our actions are coming from, then we can't change them. So we're going to break that down today, why anger and desire lead to different types of mistakes, how to manage both, excuse me, and how to take accountability without self-judgment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, let's start with the idea that there are two general ways that we mess up in life. One is acting out of anger, and the other is acting out of self-indulgence, chasing the pleasure at any cost, and they're not the same.
Precisely. When someone wrongs us, we might react with anger. Maybe we snap, lash out, or say something that we regret. But it often comes from feeling hurt or disrespected.
Yeah, and even though anger can be destructive, it's usually there's a trigger. There's something happens that triggers you, and it feels reactive, like something happened first, and our emotions took over, and often impulsive, and many times it leads to regret later.
So compare that to a self-indulgent wrongdoing, things like manipulation, deceit, greed. These aren't reactions to being hurt. They come from seeking something, whether it's power, pleasure, control, and we're not considering the consequences. Self-indulgent mistakes are intentional. They're driven by pleasure seeking, like I said, greed, or avoidance of discomfort. And they're more premeditated, often involving a moral compromise.
And, that's why the second kind of mistake is often worse, because when we do something purely for self-interest, it's usually not an accident. It's a choice.
Yes, we may not like the consequences, but we usually know exactly what we're doing.
Right. So how do we recognize the patterns, right? How do we apply this to real life? Well, we look at these patterns and we recognize the patterns. Do we tend to mess up because of emotional rejection or emotional reactions, or because of poor judgment and self-indulgence?
And that's a great question. Because if you tend to lose your temper and feel overwhelmed by frustration or regret things you say in the heat of the moment, you're probably dealing with anger-driven mistakes.
Right. But if you find yourself making decisions that you know aren't right, like cutting corners, being dishonest, with tax season, prioritizing short-term pleasure over long-term gains or long-term values, then you struggle, right? The struggle is you might be desire-driven. The mistakes are desire-driven mistakes. They're not about anger.
Right. And so, you might ask yourself, do I regret things I say when I'm upset? That's an anger-based mistake. Do I make choices I know aren't right, but do them anyway? Those are self-indulgent based mistakes. And so here's the difference between anger versus self-indulgence. Anger is about feeling wronged. It's an emotional reaction. And self-indulgence is about seeking something, and it's a calculated choice. And, once you know which one you struggle with, then you can start to work on changing it.
Right. And let me just check here. So let's talk about anger first. Anger usually flares up fast, right? It's like a match. You strike it and suddenly there's fire. But if you can pause, and if you pause before reacting, you can stop yourself from making the situation worse.
Yeah, that is part of the trick, right? To slow things down. If you feel your heart rate spike or your thoughts racing, then slowing down is your friend. Here, you can try taking 3 slow, deep breaths before saying anything. You can ask yourself, am I reacting to something real or just my interpretation of it? You could also ask, am I responding to the situation or reacting from a past pain? And, another option is to step away if you need to, because time will help you to regain some clarity.
And, I love this questioning. This question is what I'm about to say or do to solve the problem or just make me. Let me just start over. The question is what I'm about to do is what I'm about to do or say, or am I going to solve the problem by doing this, or is it just going to make me feel better in the moment?
Yeah, because sometimes, right, we're impulsive and we just blurt something out, and it's because we're being reactive. We're just like, it's a hair trigger, and so we just say it and
yeah,
and it's like we're blowing steam in a lot of cases, right? And so if we stop to think about, well, am I going to solve the problem, or am I just trying to make myself feel better? But that reflection, that point of reflection, is a game changer, because a lot of times anger tricks us into thinking we need to react immediately, when actually the smartest thing we can do is just wait.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to take a pause, right? And then we need to talk about desire-based wrongdoing. Those moments when we know we're making a bad choice, but we do it anyway.
And this one is tricky because desire often disguises itself as something harmless. Oh, just one more drink, or just this one time. No one will know. But every action like that chips away at our integrity.
Right. And the more we indulge in self-serving behavior, the easier it gets to justify it. So the key is self-awareness and questioning your motives.
Right. So before making a questionable choice, ask yourself, am I doing this because it aligns with my values or because it feels good right now? And would I be comfortable if someone else knew I was doing this? And another question is this decision helping my future self or just my present self?
Right. And if you hesitate to answer those questions honestly, that's your sign. You know, if you're beginning to question it, that's a moment where you need to take the pause, because you already know the answer because you're asking yourself the question.
Right. And so if you have that inside cringe moment at someone else knowing what you're doing, or or the fact that you're letting down your future self, or that you're going to regret it the next day, right?
Right.
That those are your internal signs that this may not be the best path for you. So here are some tips to build self-control. Delay gratification. Wait 10 minutes before acting on the impulse. Visualize long-term consequences before making a choice. And keep yourself accountable by telling someone else your goals. And one last thing, taking responsibility doesn't mean beating yourself up. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that you learn from them instead of repeating them.
Yes, definitely. Instead of saying, I'm such a bad person for losing my temper, try, I lost my temper. What can I do differently next time?
And instead of saying, oh, I can't believe that I made such a selfish choice, say, that wasn't the right decision. How can I fix it and make a better choice moving forward?
Yeah, mistakes aren't what define us. Our growth is. It's the progress that we're making. It's how we improve our values. It's the questions that we ask and say, am I doing this for the right reason? And if we keep learning and making better choices, that's what really matters.
Right. And, just to make this distinction between accountability versus shame, accountability leads to growth and learning. It helps us stay on track with what we're aligned with in terms of our values. Shame keeps us stuck in guilt and self-criticism. It's a negative loop. And, when we're in shame, it's like we're hiding under the blankets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the better practice is to, ask yourself, what's a past mistake that taught me something valuable? Because with that reflection, you can see that your mistakes are teaching you things, and also they're expanding on your values. And by looking at these mistakes, instead of shaming yourself and judging yourself, looking at them as a source of for you to look at and learn something and gain something from your mistakes. Because how you can approach your mistakes as lessons instead of failures will allow you to grow is in the ways that you want to grow. It'll strengthen your values, and it will strengthen your identity of who you think you are. And mistakes, they don't define you, your response to them. That's what's important.
Mm. And so here's a quick recap. If you want to avoid unnecessary mistakes and live with more integrity, here's what to focus on. Recognize your patterns. Are your mistakes coming from anger or self-indulgence? And then pause before reacting. Slow down before acting on anger or impulse.
Right. Question your motives. Before chasing pleasure, ask, is this right? Or is it just easy? Take accountability without shame. let go of the shame, right? We're here to grow, learn from the mistakes instead of dwelling on them. So, commit to growth. Those small improvements lead to major changes over time. So your challenge this week is pay attention to your impulses. Notice when anger tries to control you or when temptation sneaks in, and then choose differently.
Yeah, because, real strength isn't never making mistakes. It's learning, adjusting, and becoming someone that you're proud of. So add in the question, am I reacting or am I responding?
And thanks for listening today. Catch us live every Tuesday and Thursday.